You know what funny? 6 months ago, I would have sworn I had the perfect marriage. I'm Lyra, 29, and I thought I'd finally figured life out when I married Ronan. He was everything my ex Jax wasn't. Stable, dependable, actually had his life together. Like, you have no idea how refreshing it was to be with someone who didn't make everything into a drama. I met Ronan at this coffee shop downtown where I used to work remotely. He was this software engineer who'd come in wearing these adorably nerdy button-ups, always ordering the same vanilla latte. Not exactly the type I usually went for, but something about how he'd leave these genuine reviews about the coffee shop service caught my attention. After Jax, who'd blow up if a barista looked at him wrong, watching Ronan write paragraphs about good customer service was like a breath of fresh air. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and honestly, those were some of the best years of my life. My anxiety was so bad after Jax that I was on all these meds, but with Ronan, I actually felt safe enough to stop taking them. He'd remember little things, like how I hate cilantro or get cold easily, and he'd just quietly handle it without making a big deal. When we bought our house in the suburbs, he let me pick everything, said he just wanted me to be happy. The first year of marriage was pretty much perfect, both working from home, building our little life together. He'd make breakfast while I did my morning meetings, and I'd handle dinner so he could wrap up his work. We had this routine that just worked. My friends kept saying how lucky I was to find a good one. Even my mom, who hated every guy I dated, adored Ronan. Looking back now, I guess things started changing when I noticed how different he was from other guys. At first, that's what I loved about him. He'd actually listen when I talked about my day, instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. He never tried to fix everything like Jax did, you know, that typical guy thing where they try to solve your problems instead of just letting you vent. Ronan would just sit there, nodding and asking questions, making me feel heard. We weren't exactly living paycheck to paycheck either. Ronan made good money, and my marketing job wasn't too shabby. We could afford nice things, take weekend trips, build our savings. It was stable, safe, everything I thought I wanted after the chaos with Jax. But here's the thing about feeling safe. Sometimes it messes with your head. You start taking it for granted, you know. Like I stopped appreciating how Ronan would text if he was running late because he didn't want me to worry. Started rolling my eyes at how he'd research everything to death before making decisions. The things that made me fall in love with him began to feel, I don't know, suffocating maybe. I remember this moment, sitting on our patio one evening, watching him water his little herb garden he'd started. He was so excited about the basil growing, and all I could think was how different he was from Jax, who spent his weekends at the gym and could barely keep a cactus alive. It wasn't even a negative thought then, just this observation that hit different somehow. Don't get me wrong, I loved Ronan. Still do, I guess, in my own way. He was everything I said I wanted in a husband. Reliable, kind, patient, never raised his voice, never made me feel scared or small. But sometimes I catch myself thinking about how that safety came with a price I didn't realize I'd have to pay. I think everything really started shifting after this barbecue at our neighbor's place. It was this whole thing where everyone from our street was there, and Ronan was doing his usual social butterfly routine, making small talk about tech stuff with the other husbands, being his typical polite self. That's when these two guys, both pretty jacked, probably spent their whole lives in gyms, started getting into it over some stupid football argument. At first, it was just loud talking, you know. But then one of them shoved the other. And instead of just letting them handle it, Ronan tries to step between them. Like, what was he thinking? He's there in his pastel blue polo trying to be all, "Guys, let's talk this out," while these two meatheads are squaring up. Next thing I know, one of them throws a punch, the other guy ducks, and Ronan catches a full elbow to the face. The most embarrassing part? The two guys who were actually fighting barely had a scratch on them. They even ended up bro-hugging it out later. Meanwhile, my husband is standing there with a bloody nose looking like a lost puppy while all the other wives are fussing over him. I had to sit there watching Sharon from 3 doors down holding tissues to my husband's nose while he kept saying he was fine. That night, I watched him in our bathroom mirror as he cleaned up his nose. He had his shirt off, and I don't know why I never really noticed before, but God, he was skinny. Like, not in a gross way, just soft. We had this gym membership he never used, and suddenly I couldn't stop thinking about how Jax used to spend hours working out. Even my ex before Jax hit the gym regularly, But Ronan, he'd rather spend his free time coding or reading or tending to his stupid herb garden. Something changed in me that night. I started noticing things, like how Ronan always sat with perfect posture in restaurants while other guys would take up space. How he'd give these long, detailed explanations when someone asked him a question, while other men just gave straight answers. The way he'd laugh, this nervous little laugh, when talking to more confident guys. I know it sounds shallow, trust me, I know. And if you'd asked me back when we first got married, I would have said I loved that he wasn't some testosterone-fueled meathead. But after the barbecue incident, I don't know, it's like I couldn't unsee it. Every time he'd do something nice, all I could think about was him standing there with a bloody nose while Sharon played nurse. That's around when I started feeling this itch, like maybe I'd overcorrected after Jax. Sure, Jax was toxic and scary sometimes, but at least he could handle himself. At least he commanded respect. Ronan, he was respected at work, sure. But in that he's so smart with computers way. Not in that don't mess with him way that I didn't realize I missed until that barbecue. That's when Sloane came back into my life. She just finalized her divorce and moved back to town. We'd been best friends in college, and honestly, her timing couldn't have been more perfect. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. She started coming over for wine nights while Ronan was deep into his coding projects upstairs. At first, I was just venting, normal marriage stuff. But Sloane, she has this way of pointing things out you can't unsee. Like how Ronan always asks what I want for dinner instead of just deciding, or how he'll stand slightly behind me at parties, letting me lead conversations. Did your husband really just ask that other guy's permission to use his own grill? She'd whisper at gatherings, and suddenly I'm noticing every little thing. The anxiety started creeping back around then, just this constant knot in my stomach watching Ronan be Ronan. I started taking my meds again without telling him. Didn't want him worrying or trying to talk through it like he always does. God, the talking. Every little thing needs a full discussion with him. Sloane wasn't subtle about her opinions either. Lyra, she'd say, pouring her third glass of wine, remember how guys used to look at you in college? And now you're with. She'd gesture vaguely upstairs where Ronan would be working. And I'd defend him. He's good to me, I'd say, but even I could hear how weak it sounded. The thing is, she wasn't wrong. I'd catch glimpses of myself in the mirror, getting ready for our wine nights, and I'd think about how Ronan never really looked at me the way Jax did. Sure, he'd say I was beautiful, but it was always so polite, like he was complimenting his mom's cooking. No heat behind it. Our own intimacy started feeling mechanical. He'd always be so concerned about my comfort, always asking if everything was okay. Take charge for once, I wanted to scream. But instead, I'd just say I was tired, started going to bed early to avoid it altogether. Sloane noticed, of course. Your hot girl era isn't over just because you married the human equivalent of unseasoned chicken, she joked. I'd laugh, but something in my chest would tighten. I started watching other couples more closely. How Mark from accounting would casually drape his arm over his wife's chair, territorial but sexy. How Sarah's husband would just order for them both at group dinners, confident he knew what she liked. Meanwhile, Ronan's still there doing his little pros and cons lists for every decision, asking me 50 questions about where I want to eat. One night, after too much wine, Sloane showed me Jax's Instagram. He'd gotten buffer, if that was even possible. Pictures of him at the beach, at clubs, living his best life. Men like that don't ask permission, Sloane said, and I felt something inside me stir. I started thinking about how Jax would just know what he wanted, how he'd take it, how alive that made me feel, even when it was scary. That's when I made my first big mistake. I started going out with Sloane and her single friends, told Ronan it was just girls' nights. He trusted me completely, didn't even question it. Just smiled that same gentle smile and said, "Have fun, be safe." Like I was a teenager going to a sleepover. Part of me wanted him to forbid it, to show some kind of fight. But nope, just that same supportive, trusting smile that used to make me feel safe but now made me feel nothing. The girls' nights started getting wild pretty quick. At first, it was just happy hour drinks and gossip, but then we started hitting up these trendy bars downtown. I'd get dressed up, really dressed up like I used to before Ronan, and Sloane would hype me up about how I still got it. The attention from guys was instant. Nothing serious, just dancing, flirting, letting them buy us drinks. But God, It felt good to feel wanted again. I started upping my anxiety meds around then, the prescription bottle just sitting there in our medicine cabinet. Ronan never even noticed I was taking them again. Mix in a few vodka sodas and suddenly everything felt easier. The guilt about going out, the weird tension at home, it all just faded away. One night, this guy at the bar was just staring at me, like that intense, hungry kind of stare that Ronan never gave me. He asked me to dance, and I said yes. Nothing happened, nothing serious, just dancing. But when I got home that night, Ronan was waiting up, working on his laptop in bed. He asked how my night was, all caring and sweet, and I just snapped. "Why are you always so nice?" I slurred, the alcohol and meds making my tongue loose. "God, it's suffocating sometimes. You know that?" He just sat there, looking confused and hurt, which made me even angrier. Jax would have been losing his mind knowing I was out dancing with other guys. But you just sit there with your stupid laptop and your stupid trust. The look on his face should have shut me up. But instead, I laughed, this ugly, mean laugh I didn't even recognize. You know what Jax would have done if I talked to him like this? He would have put me in my place so fast. I was smiling when I said it, like it was funny, like it was a good thing. The medication was really messing with my head by then. Mixed with alcohol, it made me say things I'd never normally say. I started getting mean when I was drunk, which was more and more often. I'd come home and pick fights about nothing. His clothes, his voice, the way he chewed. Everything about him started irritating me. Sloane loved it. "Girl, tell him." She'd encourage when I'd text her about our fights. She started calling him Mr. Rogers behind his back, and I'd laugh, even though something in my chest hurt when she did. The worst part? Ronan kept trying to communicate through it all, wanting to talk about my feelings, about what was wrong, about how we could fix things. Fix things? I remember yelling one night after too many drinks. "You want to fix things? Try being a man for once." The moment it came out, I knew it was cruel, but the mix of pills and alcohol made me feel powerful, untouchable. I watched his face fall, and instead of feeling bad, I felt satisfied. Like finally, I'd made him feel something other than gentle concern. That's when I really started with the Jax comparisons. Not just in my head anymore, but out loud. Cruel little comments about how Jax would handle situations differently, how he was a real man who knew how to take charge. I'd say these things with this weird smile, like I was just teasing, but we both knew I wasn't. The pills made it easier to be cruel, to ignore the way Ronan's eyes would dim a little more each time. Looking back, I think I was trying to get a reaction out of him, push him until he'd snap, prove he could be like Jax. But instead of fighting back, he just got quieter, started working later, probably to avoid me. That just made me worse. I'd get ready for my nights out right in front of him, wearing these tight dresses I knew would get attention. He'd just say, "You look nice," in that same gentle voice and go back to his laptop. The clubs got wilder. There was this one guy, Marcus, who'd always be there with his friends. He reminded me of Jax, all confidence and muscles. He'd pull me onto the dance floor, hands everywhere, and I'd let him. It wasn't technically cheating, right? Just dancing. But I'd come home with smeared lipstick and my hair a mess, reeking of other men's cologne, and Ronan would just accept it. One night, I stumbled in at 3 a.m., and Ronan was still up. "I made you some tea," he said, like I was coming home from a late work meeting and not clearly wasted from grinding with strangers all night. The domesticity of it, the sheer patheticness of it, made me snap. "You know what Jax would have done if I came home like this?" I laughed, swaying in our kitchen. "You wouldn't be making me tea, that's for sure." God, remember when he caught me just texting another guy? Couldn't sit right for a week. I was giggling. Actually giggling about abuse, the pills and alcohol turning everything sideways in my head. Ronan just stood there holding that stupid mug of tea, looking at me like he didn't even know who I was anymore. Maybe he didn't. I barely recognized myself. The medication was really messing with my head by then. I'd double up on doses before going out, chase them with vodka Red Bulls. Sloane kept saying I was living my best life, but I was spinning out, and I knew it. The next weekend, I let Marcus kiss me in the club. Just a kiss, but I made sure to come home with his number written on my arm in Sharpie. Walked right past Ronan in his home office, sleeve rolled up to make sure he saw it. He did. I caught his reflection in the window, Saw him staring at my arm. But did he yell? Get jealous? Throw something? Nope. Just took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes like he was tired. That's it? I remember screaming. Another man's number on your wife's arm, and you're just going to sit there? I was trying to provoke him, wanted him to show some fire, some passion, anything. Jax would have torn this house apart by now, would have made sure I knew exactly who I belonged to. But you probably want to have a calm discussion about my feelings, right? The worst part? He did. Tried to sit me down the next morning, all concerned about my recent behavior and whether I was doing okay emotionally. Asked if my medication was working right, if I wanted to try couples therapy. Like this was something we could fix with talking and therapy instead of him just manning up and putting me in my place. Sloane thought it was hilarious when I told her about the therapy suggestion. We were sprawled on my couch during one of our day drinking sessions, Ronan's home office door closed as usual. He probably wants to talk about his feelings, she cackled, loud enough for him to hear. God, Lyra, what happened to you? You used to date real men. The wine mixed with my meds was hitting different that day. I started getting louder too, both of us basically performing for Ronan's closed door. Remember that time Jax showed up at girls' night? I practically shouted. Dragged me out by my hair because some guy bought me a drink. Now that was a man who cared. I could hear Ronan's typing stop through the door. Finally, a reaction. So I kept going, describing Jax's jealous rages like they were some romance novel. Not the traumatic episodes they actually were. Sloane egged me on, both of us getting messier with each glass of wine. At least Jax knew how to handle you, Sloane slurred, not even trying to keep her voice down. Look at your husband now, hiding in his office while his wife talks about her ex. Pathetic. She was right. He was still in there, probably writing some passive-aggressive email or doing breathing exercises or whatever he did to stay so annoyingly calm. That's when I really lost it. I stormed up to his office door, wine glass in hand. You hear that, baby? I called through the door. Want to know what a real man would do right now? Want to know how Jax would handle his wife talking about her ex like this? The door opened. Finally, I thought. Finally, he's going to show some backbone. But Ronan just stood there, looking at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not jealousy, not even hurt. Just clarity. Like he was seeing something for the first time. Lyra, he said, his voice steady. I think you and Sloane should take this somewhere else. I'm trying to work. So calm. So reasonable. So freaking infuriating. Or what? I taunted, stepping into his space. What are you going to do about it? Jax would have slapped me across the room for half the stuff I've said to you. But you'll probably just ask me to respect your boundaries or some therapy garbage. I said it with this mean little laugh swaying slightly from the pills and wine. Behind me, Sloane snorted, mumbling something about how she couldn't believe I married such a wimp. And that's when I saw it. Something in Ronan's eyes just clicked off, like a switch being flipped. He looked at me for a long moment, then past me at Sloane, then back to me. You're toxic, he said quietly. Not yelling, not angry, just stating a fact. And I'm done. He walked past us both, grabbed his keys, and left. No drama, no slamming doors. Just left. Sloane thought it was hilarious, but something about his tone made my stomach drop. He'll be back, I said, but my voice sounded weird even to me. He always comes back. He can't handle being alone. Sloane and I finished the wine, made jokes about his dramatic exit, but something felt different this time. The medication wasn't even helping with the anxiety anymore. Hours passed. No calls, no texts. I started posting on social media, subtle stuff at first. Sometimes people show their true colors, then less subtle. Guess some men can't handle strong women. I kept checking his location on Find My iPhone, watching his dot sit still at his parents' house across town. The next morning, hungover and still slightly buzzed from the meds, I started calling. Straight to voicemail. His mom answered their house phone, voice cold. He doesn't want to talk right now, Lyra. Me, the one he always said could do no wrong. He was ignoring me. I drove by his parents' house that afternoon, saw his car in the driveway. Sent him paragraph after paragraph about how I was just joking, how Jax was ancient history, how he was overreacting. I married you, didn't I? I chose you. No response. Sloan said he was being manipulative by ignoring me. Jax used to do this too, remember? The silent treatment. But this felt different. Jax's silent treatments were always about control, about making me beg. This felt like Ronan was just done. I kept drinking, kept taking my pills, kept posting on social media, started telling everyone who would listen how Ronan had abandoned me during a mental health crisis, posted old pictures of us, captioned with stuff like missing when things were simple, and sometimes love isn't enough. But you know what the worst part was? People weren't buying it. Comments like praying for you both started turning into maybe get help. My own sister texted me, saw your posts. Are you okay? Like, really okay? Even Sloan started getting weird, saying maybe I should slow down with the pills and wine. 3 days in, I got a text from him. Just 3 words. I'm filing tomorrow. I called immediately, sobbing, switching between apologizing and accusing. You can't just throw away our marriage. Jax used to hit me and I stayed. You're really leaving just because I made some jokes? His response was so calm, it made me crazy. Those weren't jokes, Lyra. You're glorifying abuse because I won't abuse you. Please get help. Then he blocked my number. I started sending emails instead, long, rambling messages switching between apologies and accusations. I only said those things because you made me feel so insecure with your perfect little nice guy act. I was just trying to help you be more assertive. You're really going to throw away everything we built because you can't handle some criticism? His responses, when they came, were like talking to a different person. Short, factual, addressed only practical matters. Please stop showing up at my parents' house. Your things will be packed and ready on Saturday. My lawyer will contact yours. No emotion, no anger, nothing I could work with. I tried everything. Showed up at his office crying. He had security escort me out. Sent screenshots of our happy texts to his family. They blocked me. Posted about our intimate moments on Facebook. His friends unfriended me. Nothing was working like it used to with Jax, where the drama would at least end in passionate makeup sex. Sloan started pulling away too. Maybe you should lay off the pills for a bit, she suggested one night, watching me wash down another Xanax with wine. You're kind of scary right now. Scary? Me? I wasn't the one acting all cold and robotic like Ronan. I did the only thing I could think of. I called Jax. Actually called my abusive ex for advice on getting my husband back. How messed up is that? But the pills and alcohol made it make sense somehow. Jax laughed when I told him what happened. Sounds like your new man finally grew a spine, he said. Too late though, right? That night, I sent Ronan one last email. You want to know the truth? You're right. I am toxic. But you knew what you were getting into. You saw the mess Jax left me in, and you thought you could fix me with your nice guy routine. But guess what? Some of us aren't meant to be fixed. Some of us need a man who can handle our crazy, not run away from it. His response came faster than usual. Lyra, I never wanted to fix you. I wanted to love you. But you'd rather glorify abuse than accept love. That's your choice to make. But I won't stick around to watch you destroy yourself. I hope you get help. I really do. I stared at those words through wine-blurred eyes, feeling something break inside me. Because he was right. I had chosen this. Every pill, every drink, every cruel comparison to Jax, every night out with Marcus. I'd systematically destroyed the one genuinely good thing in my life because it didn't look like the toxic relationships I was used to. The divorce papers came with a USB drive. That's what broke me. This perfectly organized folder of screenshots, recordings, texts, everything. Every nasty comment about Jax's abuse. Every drunk video I'd posted on social media comparing them. A recording from his home office the day Sloan was over. Even screenshots from my location history showing all my nights at clubs. He documented everything. Not in a creepy way, but in that same methodical, thorough way he did everything. Each incident categorized and dated. My increasing pill usage, the alcohol receipts, the way I'd switched from praising him on social media to subtle digs, then outright mockery. He had proof of everything. His lawyer called it psychological abuse and substance abuse issues. My lawyer called it a very strong case. I called it Tuesday, but nobody found that funny. Even Sloan, when I showed her, just whispered, "Holy crap, Lyra, you really messed up." I tried damage control, deleted my social media posts, started attending AA meetings just for show, even made a big post about working on myself and mental health awareness. But Ronan's documentation showed the pattern too clearly. This wasn't a mental health crisis. This was me systematically tearing down a good man because he wouldn't act like my abusive ex. The worst part? He wasn't even being vindictive. The divorce terms were fair. More than fair, actually. He'd calculated everything down to the penny, even accounting for my recent shopping sprees. He just wanted out. Clean and simple. No drama, no revenge. Just done. Marcus stopped answering my texts. Turns out the bad boy act isn't so fun when you're actually single. Even Jax, when I drunk dialed him again, just laughed. Sounds like your nice guy turned out to have a backbone after all, he said. Respect. I started telling anyone who would listen that Ronan was the toxic one. He documented everything. Who does that? That's literally abuse. But people just looked at me with this mix of pity and disgust. His systematic documentation wasn't crazy. It was self-protection. He knew exactly what was coming because I'd shown him who I was, over and over. The mediation meeting was the worst. Sitting across from him, he looked good. Calm. Like a weight had been lifted. Meanwhile, I was barely holding it together, still slightly buzzed from morning anxiety meds. He didn't even look angry, just resigned. Like he was handling an unfortunate but necessary business transaction. Everything fell apart after that meeting. Found out most of our mutual friends had seen his evidence folder. Apparently, he'd been quietly showing people for weeks, not to be malicious, just to protect himself from my she's crazy narrative. Smart. Always so annoyingly smart. I tried playing the victim card one last time, made this long, tearful Instagram live about how sometimes the people who seem nicest are actually the most manipulative. Bad move. Someone recorded it and sent it to his lawyer. Next thing I know, there's a cease and desist letter about defamation. Sloane finally cracked and told me the truth over wine. Lyra, you know what you did was messed up, right? Like, really messed up. The guy loved you, and you literally praised your abusive ex to his face multiple times while filming it for social media. My own therapist, the one I started seeing just to look good for the divorce, straight up told me I was the toxic one. Can you believe that? I was paying her to help me. And instead, she's sitting there asking how I'd feel if someone constantly compared me to their abusive ex, told me I was romanticizing trauma and perpetuating cycles of abuse. Whatever that means. The rock bottom came when I drunk dialed his sister. I was crying about how I just wanted to talk to him, explain myself. She sighed and said something I'll never forget. Lyra, he spent months watching you try to turn him into your abuser. What could you possibly have to say that would make that okay? I tried writing him this long letter about how I was sick, how the medication and alcohol made me crazy, how I didn't mean any of it. His response, I know you're sick, Lyra. That's why I documented everything, so you couldn't gaslight yourself or me about what really happened. I hope you get help, but not for me, for yourself. Even my mom took his side. Actually sent me screenshots of my own social media posts with timestamps, showing how I went from praising my amazing husband to making snide comments about real men in less than a year. You didn't just hurt him, she said. You tried to humiliate him. And for what? Because he treated you well? The final straw was finding out he'd started seeing someone. Nothing serious, just coffee dates, but she was a lawyer. Completely put together. Total opposite of my mess. I cyberstalked her Instagram and it was all professional photos and charity events. No drunk posts, no cryptic quotes about men, no drama, just adulting. I kind of lost it after seeing their coffee date photos. Showed up at his work again, but this time I was smart, waited in the parking lot instead of making a scene inside. When he came out and saw me, he just looked tired. Not scared, not angry, not even annoyed. Just tired. What do you want, Lyra? He asked, keeping his distance. 6 months ago, he would have rushed to check if I was okay, seeing me crying in a parking lot. Now he was treating me like some unstable stranger, which, I guess, is what I'd become. I miss you, I sobbed. I miss us. Remember how good it was before I messed everything up? I'll do better, I promise. I'll go to rehab. I'll stop the meds. I'll delete social media. I was bargaining like a teenager trying to get out of being grounded. He just stood there, keys in hand, looking at me with this mix of pity and exhaustion. Lyra, do you even hear yourself? You're not promising to get better because you want to be better. You're promising to get better to get me back. That's not growth. That's manipulation. At least I'm not perfect like your new girlfriend, I spat back, the pills making my mood swing wildly. Does she know about your little evidence folder? How you documented everything instead of trying to help me? That got a reaction. Not the one I wanted, but at least something. He actually laughed. Help you? Lyra, I spent 2 years trying to help you. You turned it into proof I wasn't man enough for you. You literally filmed yourself bragging about how your ex would have hit you for talking back. What kind of help could I possibly offer someone who sees love as weakness? I tried a different angle. I was sick. I'm still sick. You're really going to abandon someone with mental health issues? What happened to in sickness and in health? Mental health issues aren't an excuse for abuse, he said quietly. And yes, Lyra, what you did was abuse. You tried to destroy my self-worth because I wouldn't abuse you back. That's not being sick, that's being cruel. Something in me snapped. Abuse? You want to talk about abuse? Jax used to put me in the hospital. All you did was cry about your feelings and document everything like some obsessive psycho. His face just shut down. And that's exactly why we're done, he said, turning to walk away. Because you still think the only alternative to being hit is being weak. Get help, Lyra. Real help. Not for me, not for your next relationship, but for yourself. I watched him drive away, screaming about how he was just like all the others, how he'd promised to love me forever but gave up as soon as things got hard. Deep down, though, a small voice was whispering that he hadn't given up. He just finally stood up for himself. The divorce was finalized last week. Ronan didn't even show up. His lawyer handled everything. I sat there in my new, therapy-mandated sobriety, watching as our marriage was dissolved into neat little percentages and dollar amounts. All that love, all that history, reduced to paperwork and asset divisions. Everyone keeps telling me this is my rock-bottom moment, my wake-up call. Even Sloane's gone all self-help guru on me, sending me links to trauma counseling and sobriety apps, like I'm the one who needs fixing, when I was just trying to make my husband man up a little. Sure, maybe I went about it wrong. Maybe mixing anxiety meds with alcohol wasn't the best choice. Maybe comparing him to Jax wasn't the most constructive feedback. But you know what? At least Jax wore his toxic traits on his sleeve. Ronan, he hid his behind all that documentation and careful wording. Psychological abuse, his lawyer called it. Please. All I did was tell the truth about how his pathetic nice guy act made me feel. The thing that really gets me, he's thriving. Like, actually thriving. His company promoted him. He's still seeing that lawyer girl. And his social media, not that I check it from my burner account or anything, is all hiking trips and charity events. No cryptic quotes, no sad selfies, no signs that our marriage even mattered. Meanwhile, I'm stuck in court-mandated therapy, living in my new apartment that feels nothing like our house, trying to convince everyone I'm working on myself. My therapist says I need to stop comparing relationships to Jax, stop glorifying abuse, start recognizing healthy boundaries, whatever. She also says I use humor and deflection to avoid accountability, so what does she know? The worst part is, sometimes, late at night when the cravings for pills and wine hit hardest, I catch myself missing the most random things about Ronan. The way he'd leave post-it notes with stupid puns on my coffee mug. How he always remembered to buy my favorite snacks without me asking. The gentle way he'd ask about my day, actually listening to the answer. But then I remember how he just stood there when those guys were fighting at the barbecue. How he never got jealous when I went out dancing. How he documented everything instead of fighting for us. How he chose his precious boundaries over our marriage. And I think maybe we're both better off. So here I am, technically sober, definitely single, trying to figure out what's next. Everyone says I ruined a good thing, that I'll regret losing a good man like Ronan. But honestly, maybe I was just too much woman for his nice guy energy. Maybe some of us aren't meant for safe, steady love. Maybe some of us need the chaos, the passion, the drama. Besides, he called me toxic and left. Proves my point, doesn't it? A real man would have stayed and fought for us. A real man would have matched my chaos with his own. Instead, he hid behind his documentation and therapy speak and emotional boundaries. His last email just said, "I hope you find peace, Lyra." Real peace, not just the absence of chaos, whatever that means. Sounds like something from a self-help book, if you ask me. Classic Ronin, always thinking he's so wise. At least Jax used to fight for me, you know?